Clara walked into the luxury boutique as if the entire store belonged to her. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floor, echoing through the wide, glass-walled space. She loved moments like this, when people's eyes followed her, admiring her expensive bag and perfectly styled hair. She had worked hard to appear superior, and she enjoyed the respect, or rather the fear, that her sharp tongue often commanded. The boutique was filled with quiet music, the kind that whispered, "Elegance!" Rows of designer dresses hung neatly, each piece glowing under the soft golden lights. A few shoppers browsed in silence, while sales assistants stood ready to help. Clara smiled to herself. She loved being here, surrounded by luxury, where she could feel like a queen. As she ran her fingers across a rack of silk gowns, someone brushed past her shoulder. It wasn't a hard bump, just a small accident, but Clara turned quickly, frowning as if she had been gravely offended. "Watch where you're going!" she snapped, her voice loud enough for several people to hear. The woman who had bumped into her paused and looked up. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself with a quiet dignity. Her skin was a warm shade of deep brown, smooth and glowing under the boutique's light. She wore a simple but classy cream-colored dress, not overly decorated, yet it gave her a presence that was hard to ignore. "I'm sorry," the woman said softly, her tone calm and polite. But Clara wasn't satisfied. Something about the woman's calmness irritated her. She expected fear, nervousness, or at least a stammering apology. Instead, the woman's eyes were steady, almost serene, as if nothing Clara said could shake her. "Sorry? That's all?" Clara raised her voice, drawing the attention of the other shoppers. "You should be more careful. Do you even know how much this dress costs? You could have ruined it." The woman looked down at the dress Clara wore, then back into her angry eyes. "I did say sorry. I didn't mean to bump into you." Her voice remained gentle, steady, and without defensiveness. That calmness, once again, felt like fire to Clara's pride. She tossed her hair back and scoffed. "You think just because you smile politely it makes everything fine? People like you should learn how to respect others." The woman did not respond. She simply turned her attention back to the shelf she had been browsing, as if Clara's insults were nothing more than background noise. That silence was the breaking point. To Clara, it felt like an insult greater than words. Her cheeks flushed with anger. How dare this woman ignore her, especially after embarrassing her in front of others? Without thinking, Clara stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The next moment shocked everyone in the boutique. Smack! Her hand connected with the woman's cheek in a sharp, resounding slap. Gasps filled the air. The music seemed to freeze mid-note. Shoppers covered their mouths in disbelief, while sales assistants looked around nervously, unsure of what to do. A few people even reached for their phones, already recording the scene. The woman who had been struck did not cry out. She did not step back. She simply placed her hand against her cheek, where Clara's palm had landed, and lifted her eyes slowly to meet Clara's. Those eyes, calm, steady, and quietly powerful, made Clara feel something she had not expected: fear. For the first time that afternoon, Clara realized she might have gone too far. But instead of apologizing, her pride forced her to speak again. "Maybe now you'll pay attention. Next time, don't walk around acting like you own the place." The boutique was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Every pair of eyes was fixed on them. The other shoppers didn't look at Clara with admiration or support. Their eyes were filled with shock, even disgust. And still, the woman did not respond. She did not shout, she did not argue, she did not strike back. Her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. That silence unnerved Clara more than if the woman had shouted. For the first time, Clara's heart began to beat faster, not with anger, but with unease. Something about this woman felt different Then a whisper ran through the crowd. Someone had recognized her. "Isn't that Evelyn Blake?" one shopper murmured to another, just loud enough for Clara to hear. "The wife of Marcus Blake." Clara's eyes widened slightly, though she tried to keep her face composed. The name was not unfamiliar. Marcus Blake was one of the most powerful billionaires in the city, a man whose fortune and influence stretched far beyond anything Clara could imagine. His businesses touched every corner of the economy: real estate, technology, fashion, and more. His name carried weight in every elite circle. And his wife. His wife was the woman standing right in front of Clara with calm eyes and a reddened cheek. Clara's throat went dry. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. A few people in the boutique were already recording, whispering excitedly, their eyes darting between Evelyn and Clara. Evelyn, however, did not look at the crowd. She kept her gaze fixed on Clara, unshaken, unbothered, but also not cruel. There was something in her eyes that Clara couldn't explain, something that felt like quiet strength. Clara swallowed hard. She wanted to speak, to say something clever, something to defend herself, but the words refused to come. Her pride wavered, her confidence cracked, and for the first time in a long time, Clara felt powerless. The boutique's doors suddenly opened, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed inside. A group of men in sharp suits entered, their presence commanding instant attention. Behind them walked a tall man in a dark tailored suit, his face familiar from countless magazines and television interviews. Marcus Blake had arrived. The crowd parted, whispers rising like a wave. Evelyn turned slightly toward him, her calm expression softening. Marcus's eyes immediately searched for her, and when he saw the faint red mark on her cheek, his entire demeanor shifted into one of deep concern. He walked straight to her side, ignoring Clara completely, and in that moment, Clara's knees felt weak. The reality of her mistake crashed down on her, heavier than any weight she had ever carried. The boutique, once filled with quiet music and soft conversation, now buzzed with tension. Everyone's eyes shifted from Evelyn's calm face to Marcus Blake's powerful presence. His tailored suit fit perfectly. His polished shoes reflected. The golden light and his sharp jawline carried authority without needing words. He walked straight to his wife, not sparing even a glance at Clara. The air changed as he approached, as though the entire room itself held its breath. His hand gently touched Evelyn's arm. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked softly, his voice filled with worry. Evelyn gave him a small, reassuring smile. "I'm fine," she answered calmly, though the faint red mark on her cheek betrayed what had just happened. Marcus's eyes lingered on that mark, his brows tightening for a moment, but he said nothing. Instead, he stayed close to her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. The love and protection in his gestures were clear to everyone watching. Meanwhile, Clara stood frozen. Her heart pounded in her chest, louder than the whispers now rising, all around her. The crowd had recognized Evelyn Blake, and with recognition came excitement. "That's her, isn't it? Mrs. Blake." "Yes, Evelyn Blake. I've seen her at charity galas. And that's Marcus Blake. Oh my God, he's really here." People began to take out their phones. Some pretended to browse through clothes, but their cameras were pointed straight at Clara and Evelyn. Every second of this drama was being captured. Clara's slap, Evelyn's silence, and now Marcus's sudden appearance. Clara's mouth went dry. She had craved attention before, but this was different. This wasn't admiration. These were hungry eyes, waiting to see her downfall. She tried to compose herself, straightening her posture, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her expensive handbag tighter. Inside, her thoughts screamed, "What have I done? Why didn't I just walk away? Why did I let my temper win?" Marcus finally turned his gaze outward, scanning the boutique. His eyes swept across the crowd, cold and calculating, before briefly landing on Clara. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hatred. It was something far worse. Complete dismissal, as if she were too insignificant to deserve his attention. That single glance cut deeper than any insult. Clara felt her face flush, but she forced a smile, hoping to appear unbothered. "It was just a misunderstanding," she said weakly, her voice trembling. "She bumped into me. I didn't know who she was." Her words hung in the air, but no one responded. Not Marcus, not Evelyn, not even the sales assistants. The silence was louder than her excuse. The crowd, however, whispered again. "She slapped Evelyn Blake. She actually slapped her." What a huge mistake. This is going viral. She'll regret this for the rest of her life. Clara's stomach twisted, the weight of shame pressed down on her shoulders. She thought of her social circle, her friends who admired her confidence, the people she often bragged to about her expensive taste. What would they say when they saw this video? Would they laugh at her? Would they abandon her? Evelyn, on the other hand, remained unshaken. She did not demand apologies, did not shout, did not even look embarrassed. She stood with dignity, her chin slightly raised, her hand resting gently on Marcus's arm. She seemed to glow, not because of her wealth or her husband's power, but because of the calmness she carried inside. The more Evelyn stayed composed, the smaller Clara felt. Her anger had made her loud, but Evelyn's silence made her powerful. Marcus leaned closer to his wife. "Do you want to leave?" he asked gently. Evelyn shook her head. "Not yet." Her voice was firm but soft, carrying strength without force. That simple answer made Clara's knees weak. She wanted Evelyn to leave, to disappear, to give her a chance to escape the judgmental eyes of the crowd. But Evelyn stayed, not out of revenge, but out of quiet control. One of the sales assistants nervously approached Marcus. "Mr. Blake, we're so sorry for this incident. If there's anything we can—" Marcus raised a hand, cutting him off politely. "No need, just continue your work." His tone was respectful but firm, leaving no space for further interruptions. The assistant nodded quickly and stepped back, relieved but shaken. Clara tried again, her voice cracking slightly. I didn't mean it like that. Really, I didn't know who she was. If I had known, She stopped herself, realizing too late how her words sounded. If I had known. Did that mean she only regretted it because Evelyn was important? The whispers grew sharper. She only cares because it's Evelyn Blake? Exactly. She wouldn't apologize to anyone else. Clara's face burned hotter. She wanted to vanish, but her feet refused to move. Pride chained her in place, while fear whispered that running would only make things worse. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice calm but clear enough for everyone to hear. "You don't need to explain," she said, her gaze resting steadily on Clara. "Anger often speaks faster than reason." The words were not cruel, but they pierced Clara's heart. Evelyn wasn't excusing her. She was exposing her. Clara's lips trembled. For the first time in years, she felt truly small, like a child caught misbehaving in front of the entire world. She wished Evelyn would shout, would argue, would give her something to fight back against. But Evelyn's calmness left her defenseless. The boutique remained silent again, except for the soft buzz of phones recording. Clara realized that every second was being captured, shared, and soon the whole city would know. Her mind raced in panic. What if Marcus sues me? What if they destroy my reputation? What if this moment ruins everything I've built? Her legs weakened, and she gripped a display table for balance. The glittering jewelry inside the glass case reflected her pale, frightened face back at her. She didn't see the confident woman she had tried to be. She saw someone foolish, reckless, and desperately out of control. Evelyn glanced at Marcus and gave him a reassuring smile once again. He nodded, his arm gently guiding her toward a chair in the boutique, where she sat gracefully. Even while seated, she carried an aura of strength, while Clara stood trembling nearby, unsure of her fate. The crowd waited, hungry for the next moment. Everyone could sense that this was only the beginning, not the end. Clara pressed her lips together, her pride screaming at her not to bow, but her fear whispering that she had no choice. For the first time in her life, she felt the urge to kneel, and the whisper in the crowd grew louder, heavier, like a storm about to break. The boutique no longer felt like a store. It felt like a stage, with every shopper, every worker, and even the walls themselves holding their breath. Marcus Blake, the billionaire whose name carried power in every corner of the city, now stood in the middle of the room. His presence was so commanding that even those who had never met him in person felt their hearts race. He leaned close to his wife, Evelyn, his eyes full of tenderness. The way he looked at her told the world exactly who she was to him, not just his wife, but his partner, his equal, the woman he deeply respected. "Are you sure you're fine?" he asked again, his voice lower this time. Evelyn touched his hand, lightly. "Yes, Marcus, I'm fine." Her voice was steady, almost serene, though the faint red mark on her cheek told the truth of what had happened only minutes ago. Marcus straightened, his tall figure towering above everyone else. For a moment he scanned the room. His sharp eyes moved across the crowd, pausing briefly at Clara, then moving on, as if she were not worth his attention. That one brief look was enough to make Clara's knees tremble. Clara had always thought of herself as strong, confident, and untouchable. But standing in front of Marcus Blake, she felt small, like a child caught in the middle of a storm she couldn't control. The whispers in the boutique grew louder. That's really Marcus Blake. He came here himself, just for her. Look at the way he treats her. So much respect. Every word stabbed Clara deeper. She had slapped a woman in anger, thinking she was just another stranger. But now, with Marcus Blake standing in front of her, she realized she had humiliated someone who carried more dignity than she could ever hope to have. One of Marcus's bodyguards stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Sir, should we escort you and Mrs. Blake outside?" Marcus shook his head. "No. Evelyn decides." Those words were simple, but they echoed loudly in Clara's mind. A billionaire, a man used to commanding thousands, let his wife decide in that moment. The respect in his tone was undeniable. Clara had always believed money and power made someone important, but now she saw a different kind of importance, the kind that came from character, not wealth. Evelyn's eyes flickered to Clara, who stood pale and frozen by the racks of clothing. For a long moment, their gazes locked. Clara wanted to look away, but something about Evelyn's calm expression held her still. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Clara's pride crumbled inside her. She opened her mouth, desperate to fill the void. I didn't mean it," she stammered. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know who you were. I wouldn't have—" She cut herself off, realizing, too, late how selfish her words sounded. The crowd noticed, too. They whispered again. "See? She only regrets it because Evelyn is important." She doesn't sound sorry at all. Clara's face burned with shame. She wished she could swallow her words back, but they hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Evelyn remained silent, her calm eyes never leaving Clara's face. It wasn't anger that made Clara uneasy. It was the absence of it. Evelyn didn't look like someone who had been humiliated. She looked like someone who refused to be reduced by another's actions. Marcus finally spoke, his tone sharp yet quiet. "My wife owes no one an explanation." He turned to the crowd, his gaze like steel. "But you all witnessed what happened." A murmur of agreement rose among the shoppers. Clara felt the floor slipping beneath her. She wanted to defend herself, to explain, but every word she thought of sounded hollow. No excuse could erase the sound of that slap or the image of Evelyn's dignity in the face of humiliation. Her chest tightened. What have I done? The more she thought about it, the more her pride collapsed. She remembered how she had strutted into the boutique minutes earlier, craving admiration. Now the same eyes that had once glanced at her with curiosity stared at her with judgment. Her body felt heavy, her breath shallow. Her hand gripped her handbag so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. For the first time, Clara felt tears pressing against her eyes, but she couldn't cry, not here, not in front of them. Still, her heart pounded faster and faster, as if it wanted to escape her chest. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice soft but strong. "You don't need to fear me," she said. Her words floated calmly across the boutique. "But you should ask yourself why you let anger guide you." Clara's lips parted, but no sound came out. She wanted to speak, but Evelyn's words struck too deeply. She had no answer. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Even those who had come just to shop now stood frozen, as if they were part of a lesson they hadn't expected. Clara swallowed hard, her pride breaking piece by piece. For the first time in her life, she felt something stronger than embarrassment. She felt regret. Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to blink them away. She wanted to sink to the floor, to vanish, to escape the heavy silence pressing down on her. Instead, she whispered hoarsely, "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, barely audible, but the entire boutique heard it. Evelyn looked at her, still calm, still composed. She didn't smile, she didn't frown. She simply watched. Marcus remained silent beside his wife, letting her be the one who decided how to respond, and Clara, once proud and loud, felt herself shrinking under the weight of her own actions. The whispers in the boutique didn't fade. They grew heavier, sharper, spreading like wildfire. "She's begging now." She should be. This will be everywhere in minutes. Clara knew it was true. Her mistake wasn't just in this boutique anymore. It was already being carried to the outside world through videos and whispers. Her chest heaved as she looked at Evelyn, her voice trembling again. "Please, forgive me." The boutique remained silent, waiting for Evelyn's answer. And in that silence, Clara's world hung on the edge. The silence in the boutique weighed heavily on Clara. Every second felt like an hour. Every whisper from the crowd cut deeper than a knife. She had once loved being the center of attention, but now those very eyes that once might have admired her were filled with disgust, shock, and judgment. Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to breathe, but the air felt too heavy, pressing down on her chest. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. Her hands shook as she clutched her handbag like a lifeline. The words she had forced out earlier, "I'm sorry," still echoed in her head. But they hadn't sounded strong enough. They hadn't erased what she had done. They hadn't brought back her pride. And Evelyn's silence made it worse. If Evelyn had shouted, Clara could have shouted back. If Evelyn had cried, Clara might have defended herself. But Evelyn had done none of that. She simply stood there, calm and dignified, her silence louder than any words. It broke Clara. Her knees suddenly weakened. Before she could stop herself, she sank down, the polished marble floor cold beneath her. Gasps rose from the crowd and someone whispered, "She's kneeling." Clara lowered her head, tears burning her eyes. Pride screamed at her to stand up, but fear kept her down. For the first time in her life, she realized she had no control. She had always believed money, appearance, and arrogance gave her power. But in front of Evelyn, those things meant nothing. "Please," Clara's voice cracked as tears slipped down her cheeks. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't thinking." Her words came out messy, broken, desperate. She wasn't speaking to the crowd anymore. She wasn't even speaking to Marcus. She was speaking directly to Evelyn, the woman she had struck without thought, the woman who had responded not with anger, but with grace. Evelyn remained still, her eyes soft but unreadable. She did not move to lift Clara, nor did she turn away. She simply watched. The crowd whispered again. "She's really begging. I've never seen anything like this." "She deserves this humiliation." Each whisper made Clara cry harder. She had always prided herself on being untouchable, someone others envied. But now she was on her knees, begging like a child who had lost everything. Her mind screamed at her, "Get up! Stop embarrassing yourself!" But her heart whispered another truth. "You brought this on yourself." Marcus stood quietly beside Evelyn, his face calm but unreadable. He didn't interfere. He didn't scold Clara, nor did he offer her mercy. He left the moment entirely in Evelyn's hands. It was clear that even with his wealth and power, he trusted his wife to lead. Clara's tears fell faster. She pressed her hands together in front of her chest, as if in prayer. "Please, Mrs. Blake, Evelyn, I was wrong. I don't know what came over me. I let my pride control me. Please don't hate me." The sound of her voice echoed in the boutique, raw and trembling. Some shoppers shook their heads, others crossed their arms, and a few even filmed more closely. They wanted every second of this to be remembered, replayed, and shared. Clara knew. Tomorrow her face would be everywhere, not as the woman people admired, but as the woman who had fallen from pride into shame. Her tears blurred her vision. She could barely see Evelyn anymore, only the outline of her graceful figure. Yet even through the blur, Evelyn seemed radiant, untouched by hate, untouched by humiliation, standing strong where Clara had collapsed. Evelyn finally moved. She took a slow step forward, her heels clicking softly against the floor. The sound made Clara flinch, her heart racing. She didn't know if Evelyn would walk past her, ignore her, or confront her. Then, to Clara's shock, Evelyn gently reached down and touched her arm. The touch was soft but firm, lifting her from the cold marble floor. Clara resisted at first, ashamed to rise, but Evelyn's strength guided her up. "No one belongs on the floor," Evelyn said quietly, her voice calm yet commanding. Clara's tears continued to fall. She couldn't speak. She only nodded, her lips trembling, her pride shattered into pieces. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Some had expected Evelyn to punish Clara, to lash out, to humiliate her in return. But instead, Evelyn lifted her, refusing to let her stay kneeling. That moment was more powerful than anger. It was grace. Clara's sobs quieted, though her tears still rolled. Her chest heaved as she tried to find her voice. I don't deserve your kindness," she whispered. Evelyn met her eyes, her gaze steady. "Perhaps not," she replied, softly. "But forgiveness is not about what we deserve. It's about what we need." Those words pierced Clara's heart deeper than any insult. She broke into fresh tears, covering her face with her trembling hands. The crowd grew silent again, moved by Evelyn's composure. Even Marcus glanced at his wife with admiration, pride glowing in his eyes. Clara, however, felt both relief and humiliation. Relief because Evelyn had lifted her, humiliation because she knew she would never forget this moment. She would never again see herself as the proud, superior woman she had once been. The silence stretched once more. Only the sound of Clara's quiet sobs filled the room. Evelyn stepped back, her dignity unshaken, her presence still commanding without a single raised word. And Clara stood there, broken, trembling, tears staining her cheeks. She had begged. She had knelt, and she had been lifted not by her own strength, but by the grace of the very woman she had humiliated. In that moment, Clara realized the truth she had avoided all her life. Real strength wasn't loud. It wasn't arrogant. Real strength was calm, steady, and kind, and Evelyn had all of it. The boutique had fallen into a silence so deep that even the quiet music playing in the background felt distant. Clara stood with her face still damp from tears, her pride broken into pieces. Her body trembled, as though every whisper in the room pressed against her skin like a weight she could not carry. Evelyn, however, stood steady. Her calm presence seemed untouched by the chaos. The red mark on her cheek remained, a reminder of what had happened. Yet she did not look weak. If anything, she looked stronger than anyone in the room. Marcus stayed close, his sharp eyes watching, but he did not interfere. He trusted his wife's strength, and that trust was clear in the way he stood, firm, protective, yet allowing her to lead the moment. Evelyn looked at Clara, her gaze soft but piercing. "Do you know what hurts more than a slap?" she asked, quietly, her voice gentle but carrying through the boutique. Clara sniffled, wiping at her face. What do you mean?" Her voice shook with shame and fear. "Hatred," Evelyn said softly. "Hatred is heavier than anger. It poisons the one who carries it." The words sank deep into Clara's chest. She blinked at Evelyn, confused, her lips trembling. She had expected shouting, maybe even insults, but instead Evelyn spoke about hatred as if she had no intention of returning what Clara had done to her. Evelyn continued, her voice steady. "You struck me out of pride. You thought it would make you strong. But strength doesn't come from hurting others. It comes from knowing when to rise above it." Clara's tears returned, hot and shameful. She whispered, I don't know why I did it. I was angry. I thought you were looking down on me. I didn't know." Evelyn raised a hand gently, stopping her. "It doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter that I am Marcus Blake's wife. What matters is that you allowed your pride to speak louder than your heart." The crowd shifted. Some nodded in agreement. Others glanced at Clara with disappointment. The truth in Evelyn's words was undeniable. Clara lowered her head, unable to meet Evelyn's eyes. She had no defense, no clever excuse left. For the first time, she saw herself clearly, as someone who had let arrogance blind her. Evelyn stepped closer, her calm energy filling the space between them. She didn't speak with anger, she didn't raise her voice. She simply spoke with truth. "When I stayed silent after you struck me," Evelyn said, "it wasn't because I was weak. It was because I refused to let anger control me. That silence was not fear. It was strength." The words hit Clara like a wave. She remembered how that silence had made her furious, how it had burned more than any shouted insult could have. Now she understood why. Evelyn's silence had revealed her own emptiness. Clara's shoulders shook. I'm so sorry," she whispered again, her voice cracking. Evelyn studied her for a moment, then spoke in a tone both soft and firm. "Apologies mean little if nothing changes. If today only leaves you embarrassed, then it is wasted. But if it teaches you to control your pride, then it is worth something." The boutique was silent, every shopper holding their breath. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes were on Evelyn as she spoke words that cut deeper than punishment ever could. Clara nodded quickly, her tears falling faster. Yes, I'll change. I promise. I don't want to be like this anymore." Evelyn's expression softened. "Good," she said quietly. "Then let this moment remind you that arrogance is fragile. It shatters the moment it meets true strength." Clara covered her face with her hands. She had never felt so small, yet oddly, she felt something else stirring inside. Relief. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding behind pride. She wasn't pretending. She was exposed. Yes, but she was also free from the mask she had worn for so long. Marcus watched Evelyn with admiration, pride shining in his eyes. He had seen his wife face public humiliation with grace, and now he saw her transform that moment into a lesson that touched not only Clara but everyone in the room. The shoppers whispered again, but their tone had changed. "She's incredible." "Did you hear what she said? That's true strength. No wonder Marcus Blake respects her so much." Evelyn turned slightly toward the crowd, her calm gaze sweeping over them. "We all make mistakes," she said gently. "What matters is not the mistake itself, but what we do after it. Do we repeat it, or do we learn from it?" A hush fell over the boutique. Even those who had come only to shop felt as though they had been given something to think about. Evelyn looked back at Clara. "I will not carry anger toward you. I refuse to let it weigh on my heart. But you must decide what you carry in yours." Clara wept openly now, her sobs quiet but uncontrollable. "Thank you," she whispered between tears. "Thank you for not hating me." Evelyn gave her a small, calm smile. "Hatred is too heavy. Forgiveness is lighter." The words washed over Clara like a balm. She knew she didn't deserve such grace, but Evelyn had given it freely, and in that moment, Clara felt something shift inside her. A seed of change, fragile but real. Evelyn stepped back, her dignity intact, her presence unshaken. Marcus reached for her hand, his touch filled with admiration. He didn't need to speak. His eyes said everything. The boutique, once filled with whispers of scandal, now felt like a place where something powerful had just happened. Not a fight, not revenge, but a lesson in dignity, strength, and forgiveness. And Clara, broken but slowly awakening, knew her life would never be the same again. The boutique slowly returned to its rhythm, yet something had shifted. The customers who had stayed could not forget what they had witnessed. It was no longer just about a slap or an apology. It was about pride, forgiveness, and dignity. Clara sat on one of the chairs near the fitting area. Her hands trembled as she pressed a tissue to her face. The tears had not fully stopped. She looked smaller, as if the weight of her own actions had shrunk her. Evelyn remained standing, calm and graceful, her hands still held gently by Marcus. Her presence was like a steady flame, quiet but unshaken. She looked at Clara not with judgment, but with a patience that invited honesty. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice weak but carrying years of bottled pain. I wasn't always like this," she whispered. "I wasn't always so proud, so bitter. But life, it made me hard." The word surprised many in the room. They had only seen Clara as a sharp-tongued woman full of arrogance. To hear her sound fragile, almost broken, was unexpected. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "Tell me," she said gently. Clara swallowed, her eyes distant. "When I was younger, I was always overlooked. I wasn't the pretty one, I wasn't the rich one, I wasn't the smart one. People treated me like I didn't matter. And then, when I grew older, I swore to myself that I would never be invisible again." Her lips trembled. "So I built this wall of pride. I dressed well, I spoke loudly, I made sure people noticed me, but inside," her voice cracked, "inside I still felt invisible, as if no matter how hard I tried, people only saw my mistakes." The shoppers listened, many with softened expressions. Some understood. Some had felt the same in their own ways. Evelyn's eyes softened further. "And so your pride became your shield," she said softly. "You thought it would protect you." Clara nodded quickly, tears spilling again. "Yes, but it didn't protect me. It only made people fear me or hate me. And the more I saw that, the angrier I became. It was like I was trapped in my own armor, unable to get out. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice low but steady. That is the truth about pride. At first it feels like strength, but soon it becomes a prison. You wear it to be seen, but in the end, it hides who you really are. Clara covered her face with her hands, weeping softly. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being this person. But I don't know how to stop. The crowd was silent. No one dared interrupt. It was as if the entire boutique had become a room for healing. Marcus, who had been quiet until now, spoke in his deep, calm voice. The first step, he said firmly, is what you are doing now, admitting the truth. That takes courage. Clara looked at him with surprise. She had expected Marcus to despise her, to dismiss her as unworthy, but instead his words carried weight and encouragement. Evelyn touched Clara's shoulder gently. Do you know what true strength is? She asked. Clara shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with confusion and hope. True strength, Evelyn said softly, is not found in the way others see you. It is found in how you see yourself when no one else is watching. If you can be kind when no one is there to praise you, if you can be humble when no one is there to notice, that is true strength. Clara listened, her heart aching but opening at the same time. For the first time, she didn't feel attacked. She felt understood. But what if people still don't see me? Clara asked in a trembling voice. What if I still feel invisible? Evelyn smiled softly. Then let them, because being seen is not as important as being real. When you are real, the right people will notice, and the ones who do not, let them pass by. Their blindness does not define your worth. The words sank deep into Clara's heart. She thought of all the years she had wasted, trying so desperately to be noticed, while losing herself in the process. Clara whispered, I've been living for the wrong eyes. Yes, Evelyn said gently, and now you can choose differently. You can live for the eyes that truly matter, your own. A hush spread across the boutique. The crowd seemed moved, many with tears glistening in their eyes. Even strangers felt as though they were learning something important about their own lives. Clara wiped her face again, her tears slowing. She felt lighter, though her heart still ached. I don't deserve your kindness, she whispered. Evelyn shook her head gently. Kindness is not about who deserves it. It is about choosing not to carry bitterness. Forgiveness is not for the one who hurt. It is for the one who forgives. It sets both free. Clara's chest tightened. Something inside her broke, something she had carried for years. Pride, bitterness, loneliness. It all seemed to loosen its grip. For the first time in her adult life, Clara felt as though she could breathe without pretending. She didn't need to act strong. She didn't need to act untouchable. She could simply be. Marcus looked at Evelyn with admiration again, his heart swelling with respect. He had always known his wife was strong, but watching her heal another person with nothing but patience and wisdom reminded him once more why he cherished her so deeply. The boutique manager, who had been quietly watching, finally stepped forward. Mrs. Blake, she said softly, I don't know what just happened here, but I believe none of us will forget it. Evelyn smiled humbly. It is not about me. It is about learning. We are all students in life. Even I continue to learn. Every day. Clara's voice trembled as she looked up at Evelyn once more. Will you forgive me? Evelyn's answer was simple, but powerful. I already have. Clara's lips parted and fresh tears filled her eyes. But this time they weren't. Only tears of shame. They were tears of release, of freedom. For the first time in years, Clara felt hope. The boutique grew quiet again, but it was not the same kind of silence that had filled the air earlier. This silence was softer, calmer, almost sacred. It felt as though something invisible had been lifted, leaving behind space for healing. Clara sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were clearer than before. The storm of pride and shame had passed, and now what remained was humility and the fragile hope of starting again. Evelyn stood close to her, not towering above her, but simply standing beside her like an equal. Marcus remained near, his protective presence steady, yet his expression showed deep respect for his wife. He had witnessed Evelyn turn what could have been a scene of endless shame into a moment of growth. Finally, Evelyn spoke again. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the boutique. "Clara, you cannot change the past. None of us can. But you can choose the next step. Every step after this moment will decide who you truly become." Clara nodded slowly. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. "I want to change. I don't want to live behind my pride anymore." Evelyn's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Then start small. Change begins not with grand gestures, but with simple ones, a kind word, a patient silence, a humble act. Every little choice builds a new life." Clara's tears fell again, but they were different now. They were not bitter or heavy. They were cleansing. "I will try," she whispered. Marcus, who had been quiet for much of the exchange, finally spoke. His deep voice was steady, almost fatherly. "Trying is the first step, and sometimes trying again after failing is the true sign of strength. Remember, Clara, even the strongest people stumble. What matters is standing back up." Clara looked at him with wide, almost childlike eyes. She had expected him to dismiss her, but instead he spoke with encouragement. It felt unreal. For years she had believed wealthy people only looked down on others. But now she saw a different truth. The shoppers who had stayed began nodding, whispering softly among themselves. Some wiped their eyes. They had come to the boutique expecting only fashion, but they were leaving with something far more valuable, a reminder that grace and forgiveness could change even the hardest hearts. The boutique manager finally approached, Evelyn and Marcus. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Blake, I want to thank you. Not only for your patience, but for reminding us all that dignity is more powerful than anger." Evelyn gave her a warm smile. "We are all human. We are all learning. That is what makes life both difficult and beautiful." The manager nodded, visibly moved. She turned to Clara. "And Clara, we will support you too. If you choose to change, you will not be alone." Clara looked down, overwhelmed by the kindness surrounding her. For the first time in many years, she felt seen, but not for her mistakes, not for her pride. She was seen for the person she could still become. Slowly, she rose from her chair. She faced Evelyn with trembling lips. "I know my apology will never be enough, but thank you. Thank you for not answering my mistake with cruelty. I will never forget this." Evelyn reached out and took Clara's hands gently. "Then let this moment be the start of something new. Every day is another chance to choose better." Clara nodded, holding back fresh tears. She felt as if her soul had been washed clean, though she knew the journey ahead would be long. With that, Evelyn and Marcus prepared to leave. Marcus guided Evelyn toward the exit, his hand resting lightly on her back. They walked with quiet strength, their heads high, not because of arrogance, but because of peace. As they stepped outside, the sunlight spilled across the street, warm and golden. The city's sounds returned, cars, footsteps, distant chatter. But for Evelyn, it all seemed softer now. She had not only defended her dignity, but had also planted a seed of change in another person's heart. Marcus leaned closer to her as they walked. "You amaze me," he said simply. Evelyn smiled, her eyes thoughtful. "I only did what felt right. Sometimes the harshest punishment is not anger but kindness. It forces people to face themselves." Marcus nodded, his admiration for her deeper than ever. "And you gave her a gift she didn't even know she needed." Evelyn's hand slipped into his. "Perhaps. But the real gift will be what she chooses to do from now on." Back inside the boutique, Clara stood still for a moment after they left. She felt the echo of Evelyn's words in her heart. She had come into the day armored in pride, but she was leaving with something far more valuable: humility and the hope of redemption. The customers slowly returned to their shopping, but their eyes carried a quiet glow. They had witnessed more than an argument. They had witnessed transformation, and each of them would carry that lesson into their own lives. Clara walked toward the fitting mirrors, her reflection staring back at her. For the first time, she didn't see the proud, untouchable woman she had built. She saw a woman broken, but ready to heal. She whispered softly to herself, "I will not waste this chance." And though no one heard her, the words were real. They were her promise. That day, what began as a scene of humiliation ended as a story of forgiveness. What began with anger ended with understanding. And what began as a mistake ended as the seed of a new beginning. For Clara, it was the start of a different life. For Evelyn, it was proof that grace was stronger than pride. And for everyone who witnessed it, it was a reminder that one moment of compassion could change everything.